How's it going, you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs. Now today I want to show you how to take a generic ceiling light like this one behind me and swap that out for a fan light combo. Now this is an awesome DIY upgrade to your living space, but there are several issues and several mistakes that people make along the way that make for an unsafe installation, especially when we start to hang heavy light fixtures or fan light combos, which you need to take into account to make sure you get a safe and secure installation. So let's jump into it. Now make sure the power's off to the circuit, then we can start to remove the light fixture. When I'm unscrewing the light bulbs, I can see the light fixture's already loose. That's because there's actually only one mounting screw opposed to two mounting screws going into the mounting bracket. We'll loosen that up and then check again with a non-contact voltage tester confirming no power to the circuit. Then we'll take out the Romex and undo the 3 wire nuts, disconnecting the fixture from our circuit. Now do not use drywall screws. This is classic. I'm not sure why people use them, but they always do. Use drywall screws to mount the bracket to the electrical box. Additionally, we need the right box. So I'm gonna remove this box and the 2 screws here from the bracket, which is up in the ceiling, and I do not have access through an attic. If you do, this is a little easier, but let me show you how to remove that bracket so we can get our new electrical box in place. Now, since I don't have attic access, I need to remove this bracket up here from down in the room and just accessing through this hole. So here's where some bolt cutters can come in really handy, where I can just insert them up and then snip that bracket in half and then start to pry off each side that are attached to the joist in the roof. Now, if you only have a hacksaw, an oscillating tool, or a sawzall with a metal blade, you can also cut that here. Just take your time so you don't create any drywall damage. Cut that in half and then you can remove it from in this room. So we'll take those bolt cutters and I'll kind of give you a look up in the ceiling here so you can see what's going on. I'll just snip that right in half. That's why the bolt cutters are so nice, really quick. Some people just bend these out of the way. I actually want to remove them. So I was seeing what fasteners I had. I could tell I have, again, drywall screws. So I used a 12-inch extension, and that's not going to work for all of them. Sometimes I got to grab just a standard Phillips head screwdriver and we'll get that one side off. Then I'll use that same 12-inch extension, switch it up for a shorter one. Then we'll have all the old pieces out of the way. So many of you might be wondering, why do you remove that bracket? It seemed like it was a perfectly good electrical box, so why would you need to remove it opposed to just installing your fan? Well, I made this mistake for years and years, and this is probably the #1 mistake when anybody's swapping out a light fixture for a ceiling fan or a fan light combo. And that is, you need the right electrical box that is most likely according to code in your area and just overall for safety and kind of future-proofing that installation. Now, if you know you have the right electrical box, you can see the timeline right at the bottom of the video is broken up into chapters. You can just go on to the next part. For those that aren't 100% certain, let's dive into these kind of 4 different quadrants here so you can pick the right box for your application. So looking at the 4 different quadrants, we have this side, which is new work. This is going to be where you install the boxes prior to drywall going up, so you have access to the framing. And then over to this side, we'll have old work boxes. That's when drywall is up. That is the situation that we have right now. Now, if we look at then the 2 different sections here, we'll have not fan rated and fanned rated. So what we just removed right here is the bracket I snipped off, would be exactly like this box, and it's a very common box that we see at a lot of home improvement stores. The thing is, a lot of people will use this for anything, for all light fixtures, for all fans, and this actually is not rated for that. If you do not see the call out on the actual box itself or any of the literature that comes with it that says exactly what it's rated for in terms of the fan weight, it's not going to be rated for that. And then that goes for your classic boxes for new work that have your 2 nails for support. This would be more like for your vanity lights. And if you use this in the ceiling, it's going to be limited to light fixtures and not going to be ideal for your fans. So that's when you'd step up to something like this, and this is going to call out right on the box what it's approved for. So max ceiling fan weight of 70 pounds, and then for light fixtures where you do not have any movement, the weights go up dramatically as well, depending on the spacing of the trusses in your ceiling. So if you had access to your framing, this is the one you'd want to go with, and this is going to give you a strong, secure hold for any of your fans that you'd be installing. Now over to the old work side, I like these Southwire smart boxes. It's where you can actually access two fasteners on the inside, screw those, but you have to have a truss or framing right on the side, so it has to be exactly positioned. This is only certified for a 50-pound light fixture. Again, not for a fan. And then your classic old work box where you'd be cutting out your drywall, and the tabs would be what's holding it on the back side of the drywall. I have made this mistake in the past where I was just installing a light fixture in a room without any light previously and then used one of these boxes. The problem with that is I'm kind of setting anybody up in the future for failure if they try to install any heavy light fixtures, and especially fans in this. That is absolutely not going to hold and probably will rip off of the drywall and cause huge issues. Now for your old work fan rated, you got some options here. So this Southwire smart box, you have a beefier one here that's going to have 3 wood screws, and those actually go through a metal bracket here, and that's what makes this fan rated, where again it can take up to a 50-pound ceiling fan or a 75-pound light fixture. And your 2 mounting screws here actually go all the way to that metal bracket, so they are not supported within the plastic at all. This is a cool one, but your truss or your framing have to be exactly in the right spot for you to use it. This one's a little different. This would be if you have a truss right in the middle of your hole. This is called a saddle box. So that's where the member would go through the middle. There's 1 screw that kind of gets it temporarily secured on there, and then you drill 2 pilot holes and then put your 2 additional wood screws in there. And again, this will be able to hold the fan weight and will meet code most likely in your area. Now the one I will be using is this one, and it's pretty forgiving to different applications. For when I did that light fixture before and used this box, I actually should have used this box. Even though I didn't need it for the light fixture that I put in place, this would have future-proofed the design, so if anybody wanted a ceiling fan in the future, they could get it. So let's go ahead and install this one and then start installing the fan. Now we won't have a great look while I'm trying to install this in the ceiling, so I just want to make sure you understand how it works. We'll feed this piece up into the ceiling through the hole in the drywall. These legs will sit on the back side of the drywall. Then you reach up through the drywall and you start to rotate the shaft. Once you're rotating the shaft, you'll start to see the rod will thread out. And then what that's going to do is then that's going to pinch this rod between the trusses. These spikes are going to drive into the wood itself on both sides. And then once that's tight, then you can go ahead and take your bracket. This has to be centered up into your hole because you're going to place that bracket over there. And then I already have my ground pigtail installed here, and then also my cable clamp. Both of those are already installed, just getting ready. And then you'll have 2 of those screws ready to go. We'll mount that up, line up our other 2 screws, make sure our Romex is through, secure everything up, and then we'll be able to start wiring up our fan and mounting it to this new box. You'll pass that threaded rod up and through, and you really want to take your time making sure it's centered inside the hole in the drywall. And you might have to go back and forth. So once you think it's in place, go ahead and put the bracket in, then the electrical box, make sure the screws all line up, and if they do, then you can progress on to making sure the rod completely is tight against the trusses and then running the Romex here into the electrical box. Once you have that in place, then you'll go ahead and line up those screws, just the first 2, tighten them up a little bit, and then get your other 2 screws started before you tighten anything down. Once those are all in place, then you can do your final tightening and get it fully mounted. So now for fan selection, if you guys could, just give me a little feedback down in the comments. When it comes to those electrical boxes, that amount of detail, do you want that amount of detail? Do you need it to better educate yourself on these projects? Or no, just get to the installation and kind of progress through it a little bit faster. I'm always curious to hear your feedback, and then that approves future videos that we make. Now when it comes to selecting fans, let's go ahead and get our measurement from the floor to the ceiling. Here I'm dealing with 94 inches. So what I would want to make sure is the fan blades of whatever fan that I select is going to be 84 inches from the floor, or 7 feet from the floor. So that basically limits me to something like this Hunter, which is a flush mount or a low profile fan. From the ceiling mount to the fan blades on this model are only 8 inches, so that's going to give me my 86 inches, and it's going to be a little bit over that 7-foot clearance that I would like. The only other caution I would make is many of these fans these days have integrated LEDs. I do not recommend that. If those integrated LEDs fail, you're going to have to replace the entire fixture, and you're going to be stuck with the brightness of that integrated LED. For this case, I'm going to install 60-watt equivalent LED light bulbs at 3000 Kelvin. That's going to give you that warm yellow light, which is good for most living spaces. But I could switch that up, and if a bulb fails, no problem, I just install a new one, opposed to those integrated LEDs that can really put you in a situation where you have to install a new fan or a new fixture in the future, and I'm just not a big fan. So I'm still sticking with the fixtures that have light bulbs opposed to integrated LEDs. So I'm gonna jump up, do the installation. There's a few things I'll point out that are gonna help you with the maintenance long-term to make sure you have years and years of maintenance-free running of this fan. So we'll open up and get all of our parts laid out so we're ready to start the installation. Now, if you have a helping hand, or you can do a little pre-work before you start installing anything, I usually do start with these fan blades. Remember, these fan blades in a lot of different models now are actually 2 different colors or 2 different tones. So be careful which side you're using so you don't kind of get a mix match of colors once you mount them. First up, you'll go ahead and put 3 grommets in per fan blade, and a small flathead screwdriver does help you actually get those grommets set into place. And then once all those grommets are set into place, I'll use my impact driver. Specifically, this Makita has 4 different power settings. It's on the lowest setting to make sure I'm not damaging anything, because you do not need much torque when you're driving these screws in to get them mounted to the brackets for each of the blades. Then we'll progress through, finish these off. Remember, make sure you have the right color on the right side so it fits up later on. So first up, the mounting bracket will pass the wires through the middle section, so we'll be able to easily wire up the fan later on, and then 2 mounting screws in each of the slots. Once you get those started, then you can go back with your impact driver, kind of going left to right, tightening that up until the rubber pads on the back of the bracket start to press against your drywall, and then just final tightening up and you're set. Now we'll take that motor assembly and we'll set it into the bracket. This will just set in place, but don't forget that you need the 2 locking screws. If you place these locking screws and tighten them up, this will make sure that that motor cannot come out of the bracket later on. So now on to wiring, and I'll be using WAGO 221 lever nuts opposed to wire nuts. These are superior for DIYers and perfect for this application where you're bringing solid core and stranded wires together, which can be a problem for DIYers where it's a loose connection, and then that causes you a lot of issues later on. If you don't know what those are, just look below this video in the description or a pinned comment, and I'll show you the most popular starter kit for WAGO 221 lever nuts, so you can grab that and use it for your next DIY electrical project. Now don't forget this part that we're doing right here, and that is you need the wire connectors back up in the electrical box. You can't just leave all the connections and the wire connectors out in the housing. That is not according to code. Since I only have 1 light switch, I need to bring the blue and black conductors from the motor into the same WAGO lever nut, the 3-wire there, that my hot conductor from Romex comes into. If you had 2 light switches, you would separate those, most likely connecting your red hot conductor to the blue and your black conductor to the black, but sometimes that can be flip-flop depending on how you want the switches to control your fan and your light. Again, I'm going to press that hot conductor back up into the electrical box, so we do not have our wire connectors just hanging out. We have them contained within the electrical box, which is the whole point of that being there. Now this one's kind of tricky. This is my last one. I have 4 grounds to bring together. So I'll be using a 5-wire WAGO 221, but I have 2 12 gauge, and then I have the 2 stranded coming from the motor and a larger connection. So getting that back up in the electrical box can be a little tricky. Now, if I had to choose one, the ground would be the one that I'd keep out, since the hot conductor and neutral you'd want to get back up there. But I'll be able to get everything tucked up in there, and we'll just have the wires from the motor itself hanging out, and all the wire connectors, all the WAGOs contained within our electrical box. And now we'll mount that motor housing. The nice thing is it has two little detents that'll hold it on the bracket while you finger tighten the 4 mounting screws. You'll want to get all those started, just like most of these different parts, before you tighten everything up. So now we're going to mount the blades, but classically, especially in rental properties, these blades will loosen up. The 2 mounting screws will loosen up even with a lock washer. So they come with a lock washer. So what I do is I use thread locker from Loctite, and it's the 242. It's the blue style, not the red style. Red is kind of a permanent thread locker, so it might be really hard to get off if you ever had to get off in the future. The blue is just temporary, but it keeps the screws tight. And especially in something where it's like a vibrating application like this, where there's a motor, just press 1 drop on each one of those, and then that should really help those screws stay tight over time. And then you don't get like the drooping flower look where all your blades start drooping down because no one's tightened them over time. Then we'll go ahead and mount all 5 of the blades. I'm using my impact driver. I just want to call out again, this is on the lowest torque setting. Do not go crazy with an impact driver on these type of applications because you'll strip out the holes, and then that's going to cause you to have to run back to the home improvement store and extend out your project. So I'll do 1 round of tightening there, getting everything in place, and then I'll start placing 2 screws for the upper switch housing. Now 2 there because again, we'll be able to mount that in place, passing the wires through the center of that, and then I'll mount the 3rd screw. Once we have all those lined up, then I'll again just tighten those down, not over tightening, just snugging them up against that motor above it. Then we'll bring the lower switch housing, connecting up our harness, matching the color so we know everything's lined up. And then with 2 screws already in the upper housing, we'll be able to mount the lower housing and kind of twist it into place. Then we'll take that 3rd screw, find the hole, tighten it up, and then once that one is fully seated, we'll go back through, and it's really close to the blades there, but you should be able to get clearance, and then tighten up all 3 of those screws to get the lower housing firmed up and in place. Then we'll take our 3 shades and then also the 3 light bulbs, loosening up the 3 different screws just by hand and then tightening those down. Do not over tighten these or you could damage the glass of the shade itself. So at this point you're ready to test things out. You can go turn on your breaker and then go to your wall switch and flip it. You should see the lights turn right on. If you only have 1 light switch, then you're going to be controlling it through your pull chains, and you want to test out the fan. So crank it all the way up to the max speed and you should see no vibration. Overall, my installation's super secure, and that's exactly why we spent more time on that actual electrical box. It's just specifically made for this application, opposed to trying to mount this to a loose electrical box, which is going to promote that vibration, and then your fan's going to be wobbling around and clicking and just not be an ideal installation. Now let me know down in the comments how your installation went, and if you don't even have a location for a light, but maybe you have a wall switch. Maybe you have switched outlets for lamps in your room. Check out this video right here and I'll walk you through the full process of actually establishing the center of the room, getting a box in place, and then pulling from that light switch that was switching your outlets, but now using that for a light or using it for your fan. Just remember, if you watch that video, make sure you use the electrical box we used in this one, opposed to the old work box that I'll show you in that video. So thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on that next one. Take care.